Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We need to come together, that's all I can say.
I don't care if you're singing a song.
Calls for changes to our education system at an anti-racism rally in Vancouver. Also, troubling trend. COVID-19 cases continue to surge in BC. And
pretty cool.
There's a little bit of screaming when we go into the water sometimes.
when a pandemic closes your swimming club's pool, you wade into the next best thing.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
.47 Friday night. Here's a live look at Scott Road and 72nd in Surrey this evening, where Vancouver Canucks fans have been celebrating over the past few weeks, but there is no celebrating tonight as the Canucks have been eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs. Good evening. It was an extraordinary run for the Vancouver Canucks, but in the end, the Vegas Golden Knights were just too much to handle. Let's bring in our Tanya Fletcher live now with more. And Tanya, once again, goaltender Thatcher Demko was brilliant in Game 7, but wasn't enough.
Not quite, no. And what an incredible performance by Vancouver's backup goalie. The Canucks, facing elimination twice this week, managed to pull off two do-or-die games back-to-back. But tonight, it just was not meant to be.
But the Canucks' playoff run has ended, and the Vegas Golden Knights will move on.
It sure took a while, though, to put the puck in the net. The first period went scoreless, though the Canucks managed to kill a penalty, and then went on the power play, but that came up fruitless. Shots on goal were lopsided as well. Vegas 11, Vancouver just 2 through 20 minutes, and that ties the record for the fewest in the first period in the playoffs. But then another man advantage for the Canucks with an early power play in the second period, but still no goal. And a big chance by Brock Besser and a big save there for Vegas. Then this mad scramble in front of the net for Thatcher Demko. Somehow he managed to keep the puck out of Vancouver's net. That's followed by another power play for the Golden Knights, yet still scoreless through 2. And then this hit on Tyler Mott landed Ryan Reeves, a 5-minute major and game misconduct for an illegal check to the head. Still no score then, and thanks to another incredible save by Demko as the puck gets dangerously close to a nearly wide open net. But then with 6 minutes left, this is the one that'll do it. A goal by Shea Theodore would give the Golden Knights the lead. And then with an empty Vancouver net, Vegas finishes them off twice to take the game and the series, and that'll do it. So a 3-0 shutout kicks the Canucks out of the playoffs for good. The Golden Knights will now face the Dallas Stars in the Western Conference Final. Mike.
All right, Tanya Fletcher reporting live tonight. Thanks.
You bet.
Well, a strong message this afternoon at an anti-racism rally in downtown Vancouver. It was organized by a group called Black Vancouver. As John Hernandez tells us, systemic racism in our school system was on the minds of many.
A large crowd gathered at Vancouver's Jack Pool Plaza. Hundreds of people listening to stories about systemic racism and hearing performances from people from the Black community. This as much a celebration of Black culture in Vancouver as it was a call to action, asking leaders to acknowledge that systemic racism exists in Canada, particularly in the school system. Now, many people here, high school aged, many of the speakers high school aged, sharing their experiences of racism in the classroom.
Representation matters in schools, especially in Surrey where the Black population is so low. And also, I feel like there should be more diverse population in school representatives so they can get more POCs involved in the school curriculum.
So I think it's very important that from a young age, all ages across our group, we all come together, believe the fact that it does exist. I mean, we're not going to be going around saying, hey, we've experienced racism at one point or the other if it's not true.
This event was organized by the anti-racism group Black Vancouver, and they penned a letter to the Ministry of Education calling for more safe spaces for Black students. They say there's often few allies for Black students in the classrooms, and they need to create things like anti-racism groups, anti-racism classes for teachers, and even more diversity among the teaching pool. And they want to see sufficient changes, expansions of Black history teachings in the BC curriculum. Now, the ministry has responded to the letter saying there is no place for racism inside the classroom. And while Black history is a mandatory part of the curriculum, they're looking at strengthening that aspect, saying there is a greater need for students to be aware in light of the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A memorial totem pole honoring murdered and missing Indigenous women was raised today near Terrace along the infamous Highway of Tears. Indigenous leaders and families gathered to mark the end of a long journey for Gladys Radek, who for nearly a decade walked the highway to bring attention to those who have been lost. Carver Mike D'Angeli worked alongside his father and brother to create the totem pole. RCMP have acknowledged 18 girls and women, many Indigenous, have gone missing or been murdered along the stretch of highway between Prince George and Prince Rupert since 1969. Indigenous leaders say the number is likely closer to 50. Well, heading into the long weekend, the latest COVID-19 numbers are a reminder our situation is not improving here in BC. Another person has died, bringing the province's total to 211. There are also 121 new cases today, and the number of active cases continues to rise with more than 1,200 for the first time. 31 people are in hospital, 12 of those patients in ICU. The Nisga'a government is also declaring a state of local emergency after residents there tested positive for the virus. There's also a new outbreak at Kin Village, a seniors housing facility in South Delta. 10 long-term care or assisted living facilities and 2 acute care facilities are dealing with outbreaks. And 2 people have been fined for refusing to wear face coverings during a flight. Transport Canada says each person was fined $1,000. Both incidents happened on WestJet flights, one on June 14th from Calgary to Waterloo, the second on a flight July 7th from Vancouver to Calgary. Under an interim order, passengers have to wear a face covering while at all times on the aircraft. Some passengers at YVR this afternoon didn't seem to take issue with the rule and felt safe traveling for the most part.
A little bit nervous, to be honest, and try to be safe. Yeah, everyone had them down. Seems everyone's rolling them going back up. So yeah.
I fly with Air Canada, and they give me a medical bag which has hand sanitizer and so much things.
Transport Canada says exemptions only apply while eating, drinking, or taking oral medicine while on board. Results of a new public opinion poll suggest the BC NDP has a huge 19-point lead over the BC Liberals right now. Almost half of BC residents surveyed said they would vote for Premier John Horgan's government, which has led a minority government for the past 3 years. The Angus Reid poll shows the BC Liberals with 29% of the vote, the BC Greens at 14%. Horgan recently signaled an early election could be an opportunity for the NDP, but BC is, of course, facing 2 unprecedented health crises in the ongoing pandemic and now 5-year-old opioid overdose crisis. Workers in our province are slowly returning to employment as the recovery from the pandemic shutdown continues. Last month, BC added just over 15,000 jobs, according to Statistics Canada. 87% of those were full-time. The manufacturing and agricultural sector accounted for more than 6,000 people who found work. And unemployment shrank for the 3rd month in a row as well. BC's jobs total now sits at 94% of the pre-pandemic numbers registered in February. Well, if you're part of a youth swim team and the pools you rely on for training closed because of the pandemic, what do? Well, as Jesse Johnston reports, sometimes the best answer is the simplest one.
When you're up before the sun rises, half asleep, in air that's still middle of the night chilly, Boundary Bay is the perfect place to wake up.
It's pretty cold.
Pretty cold.
There's a little bit of screaming when we go into the water sometimes.
When swimming pools closed in March, the Windskill Dolphin Swim Club missed the water, so they set off on their own and found some.
It kind of just took off, and then it was about 5 of us at the beginning. Just as time went on, more people started joining us.
With parents and family members following them on kayaks for safety, Boundary Bay became their new pool, with a few differences.
There is a pod of gray whales,
Yeah.
just a couple hundred meters further than that marker. And so we would see their spouts and hear them while we were swimming. And then there's a seal now that follows us around. It's really cute.
Of course, not all marine life is cute, like jellyfish.
Felt like you're swimming through chunky jello. That's the best way I could describe it. And Izzy swallowed one time.
Wait, what?
They're like this big. I swallowed one of the jellyfish by
She
accident.
didn't close her mouth in time, I think.
She was fine, and now the youths that started out swimming about 1 kilometer at a time plan to swim more than 12 kilometers this weekend. And even though they're now allowed back in the pool, they keep coming here.
Well, my mom keeps saying she thinks we're gonna be swimming in the ocean, in the bay here, until about Thanksgiving, till it gets too cold.
The old saying goes, when one door closes, another one opens. In this case, when a pool closes, there's always the open water. Jesse Johnston, CBC News, Delta.
Firefighters continue to deal with an out-of-control wildfire in southeastern BC. Helicopters are using fire retardant to reinforce containment lines on the Doctor Creek fire. It's burning about an hour north of Cranbrook and was first discovered just over 2 weeks ago. While it is classified as out of control, fire officials are not yet expecting it to affect any nearby communities.
The weather update is brought to you by Fortis BC. Using more energy these days? We've got energy-saving tips, easy upgrades, how-to videos, and more.
And Johanna Wagstaff joins us now with the forecast. And Joe, you've been tracking some wildfire smoke that we've seen here in the Lower Mainland.
That's right. You were saying you actually smelt the smoke earlier this afternoon, and that is indeed smoke coming from the California wildfires. It led to that brilliant sunset last night. We're going to get another one tonight, but you can actually see the haze and the smoke out there right now. Take a look at the visible satellite. This is what we're actually seeing from space right now, and you can see this plume moving up the west coast of Washington. Most of that is a marine layer, but this higher altitude smoke is coming directly from California, and it's going to lead to these kinds of views, that backlit, hazy stuff we've got going on out there. Temperatures will be hot over the next couple of days, but the smoke might actually keep temperatures down slightly. I do have a long-range forecast that looks hot and muggy, but we'll have to get through that smoke over the next 24 hours. So I will keep you posted, and I'll be back, Mike, with that long-range forecast. But for now, a story that's a little different, and you know I love this one. A strange engineering project that has been years in the making here in Vancouver is finally going to the next stage. A giant mechanized exoskeleton that weighs about 4,000 kilograms. And the creator calls it the anti-robot because the operator controls all the movements while being strapped in a harness inside the contraption.
Yeah, and now the unusual device is at the point where new pilots can be trained in it, and that's exactly what's happening at the test site up in the Squamish Valley. Have a look at this.
We estimate that we could reproduce this machine for about $1.5 to $2 million. People sometimes ask what it costs to build, and I say in 14 years of my life. After 4 years in field trials, the machine has finally reached the point where it's safe and reliable and learnable. There was many forms that it went through while I was trying to get it to work that would, it took me 2 years to get it walking the first time, and now it looks like it's going to take about 2 or 3 days to get an uninitiated trainee walking.
I don't think you actually grasp the grandness of it until you get here, and even before you get into it, just even seeing it stand up and move around, and you're like, oh my God, this thing is crazy and powerful. And then when you get into the controls, all of a sudden it's a whole other world. It's actually a lot harder than you think, and you have to move your body in a whole new way. So I'm hoping I can walk. That's my goal. I just want to walk. You know, when I was a little kid, my brother and I would pretend we were mech pilots and all of these things. And those are the things you're like, oh, wouldn't that be cool one day? But no, that's never going to happen. And yet here we are. And so when it came up, I immediately was like, I would love to support this and help out in any way I can. And the opportunity to learn to become a mech pilot is something I couldn't possibly pass up.
So the ultimate vision is like an international mech racing league where you have multiple world-class athletes going head-to-head on a complex technical obstacle course, you know, pushing things out of the way, climbing over stuff, wearing these giant powered all-terrain mech suits. This is a dream I've had for about 14 years.
Well, researchers have their eyes and cameras monitoring urban cats. What the feline spotters are trying to figure out next.
The Canada Pavilion puts all the federal government exhibits at the PNE under one roof for the first time. There are 29,000 square feet of display, and it costs about $350,000. The dignitaries on hand for the opening included Jean-Jacques Blais, federal minister in charge of expositions, and Grace McCarthy, representing British Columbia. A special guest was former Canadian ambassador to Iran, Ken Taylor, who is the PNE parade marshal this year. BC's Senator Ray Perot says he discussed the idea of promoting the federal presence with his cabinet colleagues.
I said, the people, the taxpayers of my province, my friends, I said, want to know how you're using their money, how you're using that money in their own province, and also how you're using that money to promote the national good.
24 government departments are participating, and the displays are informative and colorful. But is this part of the $6 million Ottawa advertising campaign that has upset some of the provinces before the constitutional negotiations?
Not at all. The decision was taken about a year ago to get, well, the final decision shortly after the election, the last election this year, to get going with this exhibition here.
Jim McCaffrey, CBC News, Vancouver.
I don't have any secrets. No secrets. I just make chili.
This is the last thing that goes in. And we have to clear the area for about a 50-yard radius.
Canadian beer in our chili really helps.
Oh yeah, they love it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It makes the meat nice and tender, gives it just a little tiny sweetness, not too much.
I love it. Gotta be the best.
Well, the video was shocking. A bear coming out of the bushes and pawing a jogger's leg in Coquitlam. Since then, a trap was set to capture the bear, something that had thousands petitioning for the bear's safety. As Zara Prenge reports tonight, others are worried about the people.
It's a bear coming out of the bushes at the Coquitlam Crunch. Bears aren't exactly uncommon in the suburbs, but conservation officers say what happens next is what's causing concern. It approaches a runner, eventually extends a paw at her leg, taps her, and then jumps back.
If you watch the jogger run away, you could see the bear started to come towards the runner a second time. And I don't know what would have happened then.
Conservation officials fear bears like these ones have become far too comfortable over the years, walking into hotels, exploring, checking out liquor stores, and scouring for garbage near people's homes.
If bears have made the connection that people are a food source, they're going to go right to those people, and we can't take that chance.
After last Saturday's Coquitlam Crunch bear encounter, conservation set up a trap, and it sat there for 5 days with no bear to be seen. But if it had been caught...
When we make the decision between relocation or euthanization, it's based on the bear's behavior. And if the bear has been exhibiting behavior that is, we believe, could hurt someone, that bear isn't a candidate to be relocated.
Along with the trap came petitions, thousands signed to save and protect the swiping bear.
Because the bear was willing to come out of the bushes, touch a human, would this have been one of those euthanizing situations?
There's a good chance it would have been.
I think euthanizing is a bit extreme, so if they leave it alone.
I think the trap should still be there just in case of emergencies.
But conservation officers have a message to the public.
Not one of them ever got into this job to kill wildlife.
Now, conservation officers say while the trap has been taken down, they will be keeping an eye on the area here at the Coquitlam Crunch, but they've removed the trap because they don't want to capture any other animals. Now, they're saying if you do plan to come to the Coquitlam Crunch, you can come here. That area will remain closed up at the top until Tuesday. Now, they're encouraging anyone who is coming here to make sure they're using their loud voices and keeping away from the bears. Zara Premji, CBC News, Coquitlam.
And from bears to cats, and the cats in your neighborhood are being watched closely this summer. A researcher has set up cameras all across Vancouver to count how many felines are roaming our city. As Eva Yuguen-Senge reports, it's the largest urban wildlife monitoring project in all of Canada.
Your favorite feline may look friendly, but cats are responsible for killing between 100 and 350 million birds a year in Canada. Vancouver has a bird strategy to address the threat.
A lot of people don't know is that when their cats are outside, they actually are really prolific hunters, and so they can have disproportionate impacts on our urban wildlife communities, specifically our bird populations.
This urban ecologist has spent the summer monitoring 34 trail cameras across the city. He's already gathered over 2 million photographs barely 7 weeks into the project. Most of the cats are crawling around in residential neighborhoods. But Bastos is concerned about the high number of cats prowling city parks.
This is quite alarming because those are the overlap environments where our native bird populations call home.
Whether they're feral or of the pet variety, cats aren't native to North America.
From a bird standpoint, we don't really want cats outside. They don't really belong in Canada. They've only been here for since colonization, so several hundred years. And so a lot of the animals here aren't used to cats as predators.
However, the cat count won't only help birds. Cats are more likely to live longer, healthier lives if they're kept indoors or in outdoor enclosures.
They're less likely to be hit by cars, they're less likely to be killed by, let's say, a raccoon or a coyote, and they're less likely to get diseases.
Bastos hopes his research will change people's views on what it means to be a responsible pet owner. He guesses he'll have identified at least 100 cats by the end of the count, a number he can use to estimate just how many ferocious felines are stalking the streets of Vancouver. Eva Yuguen-Senge, CBC News, Vancouver.
9:10 on this Friday evening. There's a live look at the intersection of Scott Road and 72nd in Surrey tonight. This is where Vancouver Canucks fans have been gathering to celebrate Canucks wins over the playoff run, a remarkable run indeed, but they aren't there tonight because the Canucks lost in Game 7 to the Vegas Golden Knights. But the long weekend is here, and so is Johanna Wagstaff. Her forecast is next.
Wednesday, August 18th. The National with Knowlton Nash.
A year ago, housing prices were sky high. It cost so much to buy a house in Vancouver that most people simply couldn't afford it. Now, even with interest rates coming down a bit, the combination of historically high rates and tight money is beginning to force down the cost of housing. Joyce Trammell reports.
John McLaughlin moved back to Vancouver last fall. He paid $235,000 for this three-bedroom house. Today it is worth $60,000 less, and its value might still be going down.
I like the house. The area is one that I always wanted to live in, and I could afford it at the time, albeit marginally. And as long as the economy doesn't play any, doesn't wreak complete havoc with either my income or my wife's income, we will be able to continue to afford it.
The loss of an income can be disastrous. Selling the house can be impossible. If it has lost so much value, it is worth less than the mortgage on it. Real estate agents won't list it, and nobody will buy. The boom peaked with last year's high interest rates. Demand dropped off. Prices began to fall, especially the price of land. A building lot now sells for half of what it sold last year. Lower prices mean young couples looking for their first home are now buying again. This three-bedroom house in Port Coquitlam would have cost $150,000 a year ago. The butchers paid $93,000.
It really scared us to all of a sudden be this much in debt, but we're happy we did.
And we had it all worked out so that although we both are working, that we could manage on one salary, making the payments.
Has it proven to be that way so far?
Well, how many payments have we made? We've made 2 payments, so.
So far, not too bad.
The Vancouver market is now slowly getting back to normal. That's fine for the families who bought before the boom or are buying now. The families who bought at the peak can only wonder if and when they will recoup their losses. Georges Trammell, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that's the National for Wednesday, August 18th. We'll be back with more news later in the hour on Update. For CBC News, I'm Knowlton Nash.
The weather update is brought to you by Fortis BC. Using more energy these days? We've got energy-saving tips, easy upgrades, how-to videos, and more.
And Johanna Wagstaff back now with the forecast. We had a little bit of everything. We had the sun, we had smoke, and of course some heat today.
Yes, a lot to talk about as we head into a very important long weekend. The pressure's always on for me on these ones, and there is a lot going on. Let me take you to the satellite to show you the big picture across the coast. We've got this high pressure that has been building for a couple of days. That's what's leading to our hot and muggy air. The main jet stream bringing the moisture to central coastal sections, and then we also have that plume of smoke coming up from California. And I do want to mention, I am keeping my eye on Super Typhoon Haishen, just strengthened today into that equivalent Category 5 status, and it is expected to make landfall in southern Japan for Sunday and then South Korea for Monday, so I'll keep you posted on that. We're watching some good wind gusts in our forecast. You can see a front sliding through for Sunday will lead to a gusty Sunday to Tuesday forecast. Not a bad looking one though. Look for cloud for most of tomorrow before we get that sun clearing out on Sunday. Hot and muggy looking Monday, and this summer trend will continue well into the first week back for most people. Mike?
All right, look forward to that. Thanks, Joe. And just a reminder, you can always watch this newscast online at cbc.ca/BC. Tanya Fletcher is here at 11 o'clock tonight, right after the National. Have a fantastic long weekend. We'll see you Monday. Good night.